We've been gearing up for Aligned 17, which is a virtual conference dedicated to sales and marketing alignment. It's happening May 22nd through the 26th, and we wanted to do something special for B2B Growth listeners. Leading up to the event, we'll be giving you early access to some of the Aligned 17 sessions. Today's episode is exactly that. So if you like today's interview, head over to aligned17.com and sign up to access every session of the event. We've got an incredible lineup of speakers, including Gary Vaynerchuk, Jill Conrath, Tony Hughes, Tucker Max, and Trish Bertuzzi, along with dozens of other B2B sales and marketing experts. So go to aligned17.com and sign up today.
You're listening to the B2B Growth Show, a podcast dedicated to helping B2B executives achieve explosive growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. I'm Jonathan Green.
And I'm James Carberry.
Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to Aligned 17. We are here today with Samantha Stone. She is the founder and CMO at the Marketing Advisory Network. Samantha, how are you doing today?
Excellent. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm really excited to have you, Samantha. Last time we've had you on B2B Growth. We've also featured you in the Content Summit that we did a few months ago. And so I know today's talk is going to be fantastic. Before we get into that, though, Samantha, we're obviously going to be talking about sales and marketing alignment. But tell us a little bit about what you and your team are up to at the Marketing Advisory Network.
This is actually a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I spend a very good portion of my consulting practice working with sales and marketing teams, helping them accelerate growth by bringing the teams closer together and really aligning more effectively, building tools that serve both organizations better. And it is something that I love doing because it is so measurable and has such both short and long-term impact. A lot of what we do in marketing sometimes takes a long time to see the difference. Getting the teams aligned, you start to see that immediately just in, walking into the sales floor the next week, right? You can feel the difference right away. The marketing team operates differently right away, and that's incredibly rewarding. So I'm really excited that you're tackling this topic because, decades of time, we still haven't gotten this right. Yeah. So it's important.
Totally. So in getting right into it, Samantha, you've got a few statistics that we want to start off with. We should have a slide deck attached to this, so you can click somewhere below here and access the slides that we're working off of. But can you share some of these statistics from this deck with us?
Absolutely. And, they're actually just proof of what I think we intuitively all know, right? Which is when sales and marketing is working on lockstep together, we are more profitable, we drive more revenue, we grow more efficiently, all of those things happen. And there's some great data here. Aberdeen did a study and they showed that highly aligned organizations achieve 32% annual growth rate. So that's fine on average. But here's the shocking thing. Those organizations that are not aligned, they report a decline in revenue by 7%. So it's not just that those organizations who aren't working together aren't growing quite as fast. They actually start to slip backwards, right?
Yeah.
That's huge implication. Yep. Serious Decisions talked about faster growth rate. They compare not just growth, which is exciting, but profitability, right? Those organizations who are more aligned are 27% more profitable growth over a 3-year period of time. So we're talking huge impacts to an organization when we get this right. And the last little stat that I have here is that those organizations tightly aligned, this is from Marketing Prof study that was done, have 36% higher customer retention rates and 38% higher win rates, right? So everything that's important to growing our business, right, is directly attributed and impacts how well marketing and sales are working together. And that's really logical, but I love having that data because it does take effort to do the things that we're going to be talking about. And it's great to have the opportunity to prove to people that when we put the effort in, it's worthwhile.
So the statistics show that the key to growth is sales and marketing alignment. But you've got another stat on here that says less than 10% of B2B sales and marketing organizations feel confident in that alignment. So clearly there's a long way to go. And there are a lot of companies that are struggling with this. So kind of where's the breakdown here?
Yeah. It's really critical. And that data, the 10% came from a Forrester study, but I see it every day in organizations that I walk into all the time. And we're breaking down across three really important things to sort of see the patterns that I find over and over again. We're breaking down on what we're measuring, right? We're breaking down in how we're communicating with each other bidirectionally, and we're breaking down our actual workflow. I did a research study and looked at sales and marketing alignment, and I actually surveyed both sales teams and marketing teams, and it was incredible to see the disconnect in how they answered the same question. So we talked about how many of your organization, what percentage of the leads are followed up on. Sales reported that most leads were followed up on. Marketing reported there were huge gaps in what was being followed up on, right? So there's this crazy disconnect between what's happening there. And, we're putting all this effort in and we're not sharing that information appropriately. And again, when we do this well, we're rewarded in how we do it. The good news is, though, there are actually some relatively straightforward things that both sales and marketing teams need to do to be more effective at this. It's actually not magic.
Okay.
It feels like magic, and it does magical things, but it's actually really common sense.
Okay. So let's walk through what those things are.
Yeah. One of those things is we have to measure the right stuff, right? And the data shows us that, and anecdotal, we all know this, right? What's marketing measured by? Leads. Right? Leads. And it's the biggest mistake in the world because it creates this environment where marketers do these completely irrational things to create leads, to throw things in the top of the funnel. But when organizations actually measure the lead conversion rates to opportunity, you see a significant difference in the quality of the relationships that we're driving for. And that's really essential. And it becomes not about the volume of stuff I do. Yeah. It becomes the amount of opportunities I uncover, right? And there's a huge difference there. But it's scary because we have to take a step back and say, we may deliver less as marketers. Yeah. But we're going to deliver bigger impact, and that's sort of ultimately what we want to do.
No, that makes perfect sense. You've got on here 3 sales metrics that marketing should own. Can you walk us through what those 3 metrics are?
Yeah, so the first one is that lead to meeting conversion rate. So this isn't even before we get to opportunity. How much of what we're delivering to sales is driving to a next step? And in most businesses, that's going to be a meeting of some kind, an online conference call. In some cases, it might be a product demonstration. Whatever your next natural step is, we actually want to focus on the conversion rate as opposed to the pure volume of stuff I'm giving to sales hoping it'll convert. Yep. So that's a big one. The other really big one is breaking down how long are buyers spending in each stage of our buying process. So not just from lead to first touch, but also going to then maybe it's a proposal. And then from a proposal, it goes into some negotiation stage. And whatever those evaluation stages that your buyers and your salespeople are going through together, how long are people spending in those cycles? Because as marketers, we can shrink that time, right? We can't eliminate steps. I long ago gave up trying to get buyers to skip stage of the sales. I used to think when I was young and naive, I will just get them to skip over phases, right? We can just get them. I'm going to create need. I'm going to create buying time frames. I'm going to create urgency. Baloney, we can't do that. So we can shrink the effort it takes for them to get from one stage to another. And but only if we measure that. And only if we hold marketing accountable to it can we help trend that over time. So that's number 2, the amount of time. Usually it's measured in days or weeks if it's a very complex product or service that we're selling. Mm-hmm. And then the third thing is win rate. Marketers are afraid to own this. I was one. I remember way back many years ago, my CEO saying, Samantha, I want you to own win rate as the market. I'm like, absolutely not. I generate the interest. I give the sales people too. Sales is doing a bad job. Don't hold me accountable for that. Well, that was a ridiculous stance. And as soon as I took the step back to think about it, we could influence win rate tremendously by doing research to focus on the right kind of customers, deeply understanding the competitive environment, creating programs that encourage people to buy us versus someone else, helping the sales team know how to craft that value proposition. So if we hold marketing jointly accountable to these things. It's not just a marketing job, but jointly accountable, it really changes the relationship between sales and marketing. And yes, that we need to measure revenue and be on the same page of that, but just measuring revenue alone isn't sufficient to get the kind of change in an organization we often need.
I love it. So measurement is one piece of the equation, Samantha. The next piece that we're going to talk about is around communication. Let's dive into that.
Yeah. So, one of the things that fascinates me is when I talk to salespeople, they never think they have enough tools. They think marketing has created the wrong content. They don't understand the buyers. Marketers are frustrated when I talk to them because they're producing all this stuff that marketing never uses. And they said, but Bob in the Northeast asked me, he said, I would win deals if I could get blah, blah, blah. So we went off and created the magical piece of content for Bob. But why isn't it John and Jane and everybody else using this, right?
Yeah.
And there is this big disconnect between how we communicate with people. And one of the things that's fascinating I found in the study is I always believed that frequency of communication was essential, that I had to hit you over and over and over and over and over again. And when I did some research, what I found was frequency has a small role, but it actually has a really tiny role. What really made the difference between sales and marketing being aware of and using content as an example was the variety of communication vehicles I used. I sent them an email. I hosted a training session. I put it on our shared portal. I sent it in the newsletter. I put it in the Salesforce repository. When marketers use all of those methods, they're wildly more effective than when we simply use one channel and do it over and over and over again.
Interesting.
But I sent you the email 5 times. Why aren't you reading it? Same reason our buyers don't read it.
Got it. That makes perfect sense. So what is being communicated that should be communicated in all those different channels?
It's a great question. So the fact that we've produced something makes us feel good, but just telling the world, look, there's a brand new asset here, go use it, is insufficient because we're intimately familiar with it, right? We wrote it, we edited it, we made it pretty, we made it easy to understand. We spent all this time and energy creating this ebook or this calculator or this new microsite, and we just assume announcing it will be enough.
Yeah.
But the reality is our sales teams are not intimately as close to it as we are, even if we involve them in sort of the design phase of it. So we actually have to remind them, why did we produce this content asset in the first place? It wasn't just to be busy. What was the specific question we were trying to answer, stage of the buying process we were trying to influence, whatever it may be, why did we create this? And then how are they going to use it, right? It sounds like we shouldn't need to do that. But good coaches not just teach a move, they teach people how to do the move, right?
Yeah.
And we need to teach the sales team, when is it appropriate to use this asset? Who is it for? How will it help you articulate our value proposition? Should you send it in an email? Should you step a client through it? Should you sign a meeting? Or what are the ways to use this content? So for me, it's about why we did it, what it is, and how to use it.
Okay.
And then begging them to actually read it or watch it in the case of a video, right? Because there's so much to learn by consuming the content that no matter how good a job I do summarizing it, they won't internalize. I want them to get a little tidbit that they get excited about. And candidly, if I'm creating content that isn't going to excite the sales team, then either they don't understand their buyers or I'm creating stuff that isn't likely to have value. And those are two different problems, and we'd have to solve either one of those.
So they create an asset. Instead of simply emailing it to the entire sales team and saying, hey, here's this new thing that we created, the path then should be sending an email, not neglecting to send that email, but then setting up some sort of a meeting where the use case of how they can actually use this thing is taught, getting it into Salesforce. If you're using a tool like Knowledge Tree or HighSpot, getting it plugged in to that tool. Yeah. Are there any other ways that you've seen that have been effective to increase the effectiveness of that communication of the tool?
Yeah. I'm really glad you asked that, because one of the things that even the people who do that very well, we sometimes then never communicate about it again. And the most effective ones, now we're talking about big, I'm not talking about like a blog post, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about big assets that we invest in and have significant influence, or a campaign that we want somebody to understand. I love to work with a couple of salespeople to use that asset and then have them send out a communication to the sales team that says, hey, by the way, I just used the new ebook at Acme Corp, and it was hugely helpful to convince Bob why blah, 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 or whatever it may be. And so we do have to make sure, because we're constantly churning out stuff, that we don't just do the upfront, but then we also do some follow-up. And the follow-up is most effective by salespeople than me telling them again, go use it. I also do some quizzes. So I actually like to do like monthly or quarterly quizzes on a bunch of assets. And we're not trying to trick people, right? We're not trying to get them in trouble. They're not earning a grade. But we want to find ways to remind people they need to be reading these things. And they're playful and fun, and we have prizes. And it's more about recognizing the people who do a good job than punishing the people who don't. We're not punishing people, but we do want to keep reminding folks that all this great stuff is there waiting for you.
I love it. Before we move on, so this next one that we're going to talk about, Samantha, is documenting expectations. Is there anything else around communication that you want to touch on before we move on?
I think one of the things that's really important for us to think about is that marketing has to serve buyers, not serve sales. Now, if we're serving buyers, we are helping sales, and that's ultimately what we want to do. But we have to be that reminder about that step back about what our buyers are looking for and seeking. And we have to hold the sales team to as much good communication with us. If we create something and it's not working, we need the sales team to also communicate that back to us. What's not working? Why is it falling flat? I've sent it to 5 people. Not one of them read past the first page. Well, I want to know that as a marketer because I want to understand and not make that same mistake again. So the communication is really bi-directional, and we have to create forums that happens. I make it a habit, for example, of taking a different person to lunch in the sales team when I'm working with a client, or when I was a marketer. Every couple of weeks, I take somebody to lunch. I have no agenda. We're not talking about a particular sales scenario. We're going to lunch. But I learn sometimes the most in those tell me what's going on. How's it going? What's working? What's not conversations, as I do when I send out my formal surveys or I sit down and do interviews. So my sort of words are to open the dialogue and constantly be creating opportunities to keep having it.
Makes sense. I love it. So Samantha, let's move to this next one. We're going to be talking about documenting expectations and how this is a key to alignment. So let's dive in there.
Yeah. It's so not sexy to document service level agreements, right? It's really like, it feels like, no, we want to build relationships, and, they're going to do it because they like me and I'm adding value, and all of that is sort of true. But the organizations that spend the time to actually write down and train both sales and marketing people on what the expectations are between the teams, they actually are more successful because we create a discipline about how we work together. And that's things like following up on leads, right? And there's, I think, some data for those people who do want to click on the slides. You'll see some research data that shows the difference between high-performing and low-performing organizations and what they do. But, not just do they follow up on leads, but for how much time, right, are they going to take to follow up on leads? And if they aren't, what are we going to do to enforce that? Well, we're going to create exception alerts that go to the manager, right? Or we're going to automatically reassign a lead to someone else on the team. Or there's a number of, things that we can do to enforce that. We're going to ask them, oh gosh, this is one of the ones that pains me the most, right? Filling out the fields that are in the database. Marketing did not put a lot of fields in the database just to make salespeople annoyed, right? I know that filling out drop downs and putting my notes in is really not an exciting and fun part of the job. And at the end of the day, when salespeople are catching up, that they're sort of, I got another page of things. But we can't act on the information if the data is not there. I can't pull a competitive campaign for everybody whose contract expires at competitor A this month and run a campaign if the salesperson didn't put the data in the field. And so we need to put SLAs around how much data we expect to collect. We need to put SLAs around how many new contacts we expect salespeople to add to the database in a given period of time, right? All of those things help us, because one of the things that the research surfaced was that when we asked organizations, is marketing valuable to me? Does marketing have, almost everybody said yes. Yes, marketing is valuable. When we asked the organization, is marketing supported as salespeople held accountable to doing things that help marketing be successful? Some salespeople said yes. Almost all marketers said no, right? The SLAs allow us to have the sales team do the things that marketing needs to be successful. And not just because they're nice and not just because they like us, but because it becomes an automatic part of our process.
Yeah.
Right? And then it's our responsibility as marketers to make it as painless as possible, right? As few clicks as possible, drop-downs as opposed to lots of text. You know, we can do lots of things to help make SLAs. We can give them reporting, right? So sometimes before I send an escalation report to a manager, sometimes a salesperson just missed a task. They didn't realize it was there. They don't want to be punitively punished for this. This isn't about punitive behavior. It's about making it easier to do the right things. So let's make sure they get the reporting that triggers them to take the action. Let's make sure that we act on the feedback. If we put a campaign in and we find out that 80% of the leads that we put in there are not converting to opportunities, let's hold marketing to learn something from that experience. So it goes both ways.
I love it. So beyond that, Samantha, this next thing we're going to talk about is listening to buyers. You alluded to this earlier, that marketing's responsibility should not be to serve sales, but to serve the buyer. So talk to us about this one.
I don't know why this is a thing that I even need to say, but I do. When marketers are building out their content calendars and their editorial calendars for the month, for the quarter, whatever it is, we often will sit down with sales and go through and ask their opinions. We rarely sit down with buyers and get their opinion on it, right? And the data shows us that those marketers who actually directly ask buyers what content they're interested in actually do significantly better than those organizations. So the people who exceed their revenue and lead goals do it because they're communicating direct with the buyers. There's also this little stat in there that those organizations who exceed their revenue goals, their marketers are twice as likely to actually sit in on customer prospect meetings with salespeople as those who don't. Right? Whether you walk into the sales, some cases have like a bullpen, like you have an inside sales, or you go on field calls, or you participate in roundtable discussions at an event, the marketers who directly communicate with buyers, no matter how good the relationship with sales, do better. Because buyers will tell marketers things they won't say to salespeople. Marketers will ask different questions than a salesperson will. Right? So we have to force ourselves into that kind of dialogue.
No, I love it. I love it. So this last piece we're going to talk about, Samantha, to really close it out here, is that marketing isn't the only one that needs to change. And so you've got 5 sales habits that disrupt marketing success. So let's walk through those 5.
Yeah, these are unfortunately extremely common. So they're really important. So the first one is salespeople and marketing people like to fight over who generated the lead. The salesperson's sort of ego, I think, says, I created that lead, and they will enter into a database, they'll recreate their own contact record instead of converting something that marketing puts in. And the reason that they need to stop hogging the credit is not actually because it's hurting marketing's feelings, because marketers are a little stronger than that. It's not about our egos, but it's about something really important, which is our budgets. Marketing cannot make the right investments if we're not able to track the activity we're doing all the way through that buying process. And so when salespeople change the lead source or recreate a record or argue about I didn't meet this person for the first time at that trade show. I spoke to them 6 years ago, right? And then nothing in between. But the trade show had nothing to do with it, right? When we do that, we don't allow marketing to have the right budget decisions that we need to be making, the financial decisions. So salespeople have to stop worrying about who gets credit for a lead and let marketing take some responsibility and some accountability for it.
Got it. Okay. So the second one is drop the bouncer act. What does that mean?
Yes. I can't tell you, and I don't know if you've experienced this, James. I hope not, but I see it everywhere. Well, the first thing I'll be talking to a marketer, and we'll say, okay, we need to talk to 5 buyers. And they'll go, okay, well, I got to go talk to the sales manager and make sure it's okay for me to call company XYZ, and then I'm going to go talk to what do you mean you have to get permission to talk to your customers or talk to your buyers from a salesperson? No, we don't need to do that. Salespeople have to stop protecting their buyers because marketers aren't going to hurt those relationships. We're going to help those relationships. So, yeah, we need to keep our sales accounts informed, right? We need to be sensitive to ongoing negotiations in account. I'm not suggesting we don't do that. But the sales team should be supportive and not protective, right? They should encourage those kinds of conversations, not keep marketing away from my customers and stop sort of standing there and playing security. And it happens quite a bit, and it happens for the wrong reasons in most cases. It's a fear that something bad might happen as opposed to something bad has ever actually happened.
I love it. All right, so this third one, misdirected collateral envy.
Yeah, I promise. In no circumstance ever in the history of everything that's ever been sold has a piece of collateral made the decision for a buyer whether they actually bought something or not. Never, ever, ever. Certainly not product collateral. Certainly not things that talk about me. And so, yes, we need content. I'm a huge proponent of content. But we often get misdirected on the type of content that needs to be created, or we do things out of laziness as opposed to out of need. So we'll have a sales presentation that's 90% of the way there, and instead of a salesperson changing something, they go to marketing and say, can you make me a new presentation? The problem with that is we get very busy doing things that are not huge impact. And we don't have time as marketers to then create the content that's actually going to matter.
Got it.
So we have to stop doing that and really focus on things that are going to drive the business forward. Okay.
So this fourth one is skipping the reading assignment. Talk to us about this one.
Yeah. I did a survey not that long ago for a friend, and they surveyed everybody in the company, and they said, okay, I'm kind of out of it. I've thought of everything for content. I need a break. I need you guys to help me. Give me ideas for content that we create. And she was doing some things with buyers directly as well. But she wanted to tap into the expertise of the company, partly to get new ideas and partly to find hidden authors who might create content. And she got back some incredibly depressing results that most of what people suggested already actually existed. Ouch, right? Like, are you kidding? They're like, I published that 3 months ago and 9 months ago, and here's the inventory list that I have, and I've got it organized by buyer. You know, like, how do you not know this exists, right? And it's because people read an announcement about a piece of content. They saw a title, they read the abstract, and they never read the content, and they never internalized it. It never seeped into it. They never really understood what it was. And so the sales team has to make time. Now, I'm not going to have a meeting where I watch them read, right? That's not, they need to have some honor system approach to doing that. But we have to remind them how important it is to do that, and to make sure, a lot of times what I'll do is before a meeting, a couple days before, I'll send an asset and I'll say, now, guys, I expect you to have some questions, so read this beforehand. And if the sales manager reminds them to read it, then when we have the meeting, they actually can come with questions. And when there are no questions, we can tell nobody's read it. Right? So we're going to go back again, and we're going to go reinforce it in some other way, right? But they've got to consume. And I see read, but I mean watch, and some, if it's video, or listen to if it's an auditory type of asset.
Nope, makes sense. And this last one, you alluded to it earlier, but it's failure to form. Talk to us about this one.
Yes, I did talk a little bit about this already, but we need the fields that are in the database filled out by the sales team. They are having direct conversations with buyers. We can't survey our way out of this. We will put as much information as we can gather independently. We will use techniques like progressive profiling, but if a salesperson knows something, they've got to complete the information. And we need to, again, make it as easy and not terribly painful, but it is incredibly important that the sales team not keep things in notebooks. I worked with a client. They are actually wildly successful scientific equipment manufacturer. They have decades of success under their belt, and their salespeople walk around with physical notebooks that they write everything down in. Today, in 2017. And then, one salesperson was in tears because they lost their notebook, and it had I was like, what are you why are you keeping everything in a notebook? And they had this very expensive, well thought out CRM system that more than accommodated all the information that was in that notebook. Just nobody was using it. And so we did a bunch of things to help with that. And part of it was a cultural shift as well. But we have to expect that the sales team and the sales team needs to understand why it's so important. This is not an administrative task. This is a purposeful task, and we have to help explain why to them. How are we going to use the data that's being put in the system?
No. Samantha, this has been fantastic. I always love chatting with you. The insights that you give are always unique and stuff that I have not heard elsewhere. So I appreciate your insight and your wisdom and sharing it with the folks watching this. If there's somebody that's watching this, they want to stay connected with you, they want to learn more about Marketing Advisory Network, what's the best way for them to go about doing that?
Absolutely. I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on Twitter at Samantha Stone, but go to marketingadvisorynetwork.com. You'll see my email address. Really call me. I love to hear what people are struggling with and what they're doing to get over it, because it makes me better when I can dig into how people are doing this. This is particularly true of people who are going through an account-based transition right now from other types of marketing. It's surfacing a lot of the things that we've talked about today as a more urgent need, and I'm working with a bunch of folks to do that. So I'd love to hear from people and encourage people to reach out anytime.
Love it. And you're also the author of a book called Unleash Possible, Samantha. How can people find a copy of that book?
Thank you. Excellent. There's actually a whole bunch of content in that book around sales and marketing alignment. So I encourage people to pick it up. You can get it on Amazon, and they can go to unleashpossible.com to learn a little bit more about it as well.
Awesome, Samantha. Well, thank you again so much for your time today. This has been fantastic, so I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
If you've been getting value from this podcast, you can help us reach more people by reviewing the show on iTunes. Here's how you can leave a review in less than a minute. Open your podcast app and tap the search icon in the bottom right corner. Type in B2B Growth, then select our show. Once you're there, tap the Reviews tab and tell us what you think of the show. These reviews help us out a ton.
Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.